Alright everyone, Dr. Chesrop is here. Today's video is going to be a bit more like special. So far we talked a lot about the different Sicilian lines. Today I want to talk about the common mistakes that are frequently done in the Sicilian defense's black. The average rating will be about 1500. I use the Lichess database to understand some of the statistics. Let's begin. E4, C5, our famous Sicilian. And here, the first mistake that is done lots of times as black is going to be in this position. The move d4. White is trying to play aggressively here. The whole idea is to bring the queen out, early, creating a pressure, trying to catch black off guard a bit. But remember that bringing the queen out in the beginning phase of the game is not that good because we can attack the queen with our minor pieces and develop it at the same time. We're going to understand what's the best way to play as black a bit later. But what's really interesting that according to Lichess database, so over 5 million players got this right and then took the pawn and then developed, quite well. But more, 500,000, like around 10%, one player out of 10 didn't do that. So let's check those lines and let's be sure you're not one of them doing this mistake. So C captures d4 is the best move, but some players did the move pawn e6, giving white a full center and the chance to advance with the pawns. White can play like knight f3 defending, but the best moves are d5 or c3. I want to show you some interesting line after the move c3. So now white has established a strong center, built a solid pawn chain. I could say dream setup for any opening. And black plays knight c6. Everything is feeling right about this move. We developed a piece, attacked the center, so it's cool. Knight is very active. But then all of a sudden, white plays the move d5. And here's the catch. White will simply push the pawn, attack our knight, and if we're not careful, we may even lose the knight. Let's check how. E takes, knight e7, and then suddenly d6, attacking the knight. Knight needs to retreat, let's say to c6. Knight g6 is going to be the same. And then sudden move, queen e2 check. Attacking the king. Black's king is trapped. No escape squares. Must cover the file somehow with the bishop or the knight. Of course, not with the queen. After knight e7, d captures e7, bishop e7. White has an extra piece and, of course, all the chances to win the game. So this was mistake number one, not capturing the pawn on d4. Let's try to understand what's the mistake number two. It's going to be after the move pawn c3, the Alapin variation. Why white plays this move? They're trying to push the pawn to d4 in order to get the center as soon as possible and have like a pawn chain. As I mentioned, like after d4 takes is the best move. Queen takes d4, knight c6, and black's position is absolutely fine. Then we will develop the other knight. We'll try to push the pawn to d5. We have no issues. We have a great development. So that's why white does the move pawn c3 here in order to push d4 and then capture the pawn with the pawn. So he will create like a good pawn chain to support each other. And here is the second mistake arises. What's really interesting that the best theoretical moves, which are d5 or knight f6, are not played much. I believe d5 was like the fourth move by its frequency. Knight f6 is like sixth. Just really, really interesting. And this is, of course, what white is counting on, playing the Alapin variation. The most dangerous part is that we can play very passive, playing d6, and then try to re-attack the center, but you can see that we can cause like lots of trouble for ourselves. d4, white took the center, captures. If we play knight f6 after knight c3, defending the pawn, let's say e6, knight f3, bishop e7, bishop d3, white has an amazing position. Really active, cool center, good development. The king will castle. The pawns defend most of the squares on the fifth rank. Our position is just way worse. If we play knight c6, knight f3, and then bishop g4, we can be very proud of ourselves. The move, this move looks excellent. We pin the knight. We prepare to remove the defender. We want to attack the center after removing the knight on f3. Everything seems cool. And this is where white can set a trap. The move pawn d5. Again, we're going to play knight e5. We're not suspicious of anything. We just continue using the pin. And all of a sudden, knight captures c5. Black is forced to capture on d1. Otherwise, after d takes e5, queen g4, they will lose the bishop. After bishop takes d1, bishop b5 check. There's only one move to cover our king, which is queen d7. Bishop takes with the check. Knight captures the pawn, doing a fork with the check, and then just king d1. Next move, white is going to capture the rook, and white has so much extra material. After capturing the rook, it's going to be one extra rook, one extra pawn, and one extra minor piece. So it's like 9 points. Even if black will somehow get that knight, at least it will be like +6 for white. We're not going for it. So this is the second mistake. Let's try to understand what's the third one. Mistake numero tres. After knight f3, lots of players play the move pawn to d6 and trying to get to the knight door. White does c3. Again, they're trying to do the Alapin. And we're like, oh, okay, we know what he's going to do. He wants to take the center. I'm going to play knight f6 and attack the pawn on e4. So this is actually the main line. It's an amazing move, trying to attack the center. And if d4, we're going to capture on e4. And then white plays the move bishop e2. So many students did this mistake, especially when they play like blitz and bullet games. I did it a few times as a kid as well. It was very, very frustrating. And in this position, there are a few good moves like pawn g6, knight to c6 to cover the diagonal. But so many players, as I mentioned, play the move knight capture c4. It's called poisoned pawn variation or line. After which white does queen a4 check, attacking both the knight and the king. Knight c6, queen capture c4. We have only one pawn for the piece that we lost for the knight. And after d5, queen c2, we do not have enough compensation, even if we will take the center, just pawn d3. And of course, white is winning. So this was the third mistake. Remember, playing passive in the Alapin, and now the poisoned pawn variation. The next one, which is very common, is when we allow white to bring that queen early into the game and we can't attack it. So after knight f3, lots of players go for knight c6, which is an amazing move. And d4 takes, knight captures d4. They play knight takes d4. Instead of playing g6, knight f6, pawn e6, d6, even pawn e5. So we will see when in some positions like pawn e5 is not a good move, but in some it's great. So after knight captures d4, knight d4, queen d4. The main difference is that we don't have the knight on b8 to attack this queen. And white will do a very fast development. Usually they play like knight c3, let's say knight here, bishop g5 or bishop e3, do fast queenside castle, push the pawns up, and start an attack against our center. e5 is not that good because after queen a4 check or even just simple queen d2, bishop e7 long castle, we have weak pawn on d6, we have weak square on d5. Later on white will do f3, g4, h4 will do a pawn's turn. We will see this idea just in a few minutes. So this is mistake number 4. Now let's try to understand the next mistake that black can do in such a position is to play really passive. It's either after knight c6 or pawn d6. When white does d4, we're playing like very passive whenever white wants to do the queenside castle and then prepare so-called Yugoslav attack when they do the certain setup. I call it like a diamond setup on the queen side and then push the pawns. Let's see how it goes. Takes, captures, knight f6. Some other moves can be used as well, but as a reference, I will use the knight door. And instead of playing like e5, black plays the move e6, and after f3 or queen d2, then queen d2, long castle, black starts to play very passive. This is a very common mistake that I see to do the move like rook e8, immediate like knight d7, and then don't push the pawns on this side. So white goes with the move g4. This is the diamond setup. and this is called like the Yugoslav attack, and the pawns will be pushed against our king. Sometimes like the third pawn, the f pawn joins the game as well. And eventually white will sacrifice a pawn or just exchange some pawns in order to open up the file. So g4, again, queen c7, h6 will not stop anyone, because after h4, g5, it's going to be much easier for white to open up the game. So queen c7, then g5, knight goes back, then h4, again, passive moves h5, g6, our position is just lost. If we capture, the e6 is hanging, if or like captures takes, and then h2, queen goes to h2, the h file is completely open, knight e6, queen h7, this is going to be lost. If we play the move h6 at some point, white can just sacrifice, takes queen h6, and it's a checkmate now, queen h7. Or so do not play passive whenever you play the Sicilian, especially when you go for the open variation. Let's say we do the dragon, the same thing can happen here as well. f3, bishop g7, queen d2, short castle, long castle. Well, let's say like knight d7 and g4, queen c7. We're not pushing the pawns yet. h4, a move like e6, h5, b5. Finally, we want to do something, but then h takes, bishop h6. White will try to get our best minor piece, the defender of the position, and after bishop takes h6, queen h6, it's a checkmate again. So this is another common mistake that a lot of players do. They're just play quite passive instead of pushing the pawns, creating some counterplay. Sometimes it's better to not castle at all. Like in such a position, we may play the move b5, long castle, then bishop b7, knight d7, then eventually bring the rook to c8, knight b6, knight to c4, and just create some counterplay. One of the worst things to do is to not have a really good game with a counterplay or with just a good game plan to attack the king. In such positions, whenever you have the opposite side castle, that's one of the most important, let's say, priorities in the position. Let's understand what are the next mistakes. So we talked about the Alapin, about the early queen development so far, Yugoslav attack, the poison pawn in the Alapin as well. So let's see what's next. The next one is the common mistake, which is the pawn push e5. For example, we go for the knight f3 and then knight to c6, captures, or actually it will be better to start with the move pawn d6 here, and then d4 takes, knight f6, knight c3, and at some point black plays the wrong move e5, and it can be done like in this position, or it can be done with the early move g6, like here, and then bishop g7, knight c3, and then e5. I saw this lots of times. Usually when you play the dragon, we will discuss it in the final chapter, like the open dragon or acceleration dragon, you will see that this bishop is very strong, and a lot of players think that, oh, they're gonna take the center with the move pawn e5, attack the knight, this is amazing. No, we will have repercussions here, lots of difficulties, because the bishop is closed, it's very passive now, and after knight d to b5, this knight will jump to d6 with the check, the other one will get the d5 outpost, we can lose the game in like 5 moves. Here, check, king f8, bishop c4, and then the knight is going to attack on f7 with the bishop. If knight h6, just bishop takes, and then knight f7, a triple fork, the game is instantly over. Another way to do the same mistake is to do normal development. In the video series, I recommended immediate knight f6 in order to do short castle and then fast d5, because white will do the queenside castle, as I mentioned, creating a counterplay. So d6, queen d2, knight f6, f3 seems more or less fine, and then black does the move e5. Horrible move. White so bad. Closing the bishop, creating a weakness. So white can just capture and then win a pawn. White can play the move knight d to b5, attack the pawn and win it. The d5 score as an outpost is very weak. So be very, very careful of not doing this mistake. This is another mistake. Pawn e5. When you can do it, whenever you play neither. For example, d6, here, takes, knight f6, knight c3, pawn a6 to control the square on b5, and after bishop e3, pawn e5, and then bishop to e6, we have a good control over the d5 square. It's much harder to attack this pawn because the knight can't get to b5, and later we will try our game on the queen side. Like, depends how white is going to play. If they will do the queen side castle, we will develop our pieces very fast and we'll push the pawns. If they will do the kingside castle, we'll do the kingside castle and we'll have an equal. And a bit about the close type positions where white plays the move knight c3, because this will happen less frequently. Knight f3 is more as a main move. And after knight c3, we do like knight c6, f4. So we can say like this is mistake number 7. The main idea is to play, Grand Prix attack. And if black plays passive, they can have like lots of issues. For example, f4, we do a passive game like g6, and then bishop g7, then d6. And after e6, which is the best move, but knight f6, short castle, queen e1, and some like bishop d7, queen h4, like rook e8. After f5, and then bishop h6, we're in a big trouble. We need to avoid it. Again, you can check the main Sicilian course to understand what's going on, how to prevent it. Just a few words. Usually the best is the move pawn e6 and then knight e7 to stop this bishop. A lot of players can ignore the bishop. It's actually quite connected to the Grand Prix attack. Can ignore the bishop on c4 after immediate bishop c4, after f4, then bishop c4, then play the move e5 at some point. For example, bishop c4, d6, d3, knight f6, knight f3, and just e5. Again, e6 is the best. Close that bishop. Knight g5. Double attack on the f7 square. Black's position is done. We'll lose it. d5 doesn't work. Just e captures or knight captures on d5, and we will lose the pawn. Bishop e6 doesn't work as well. Captures takes, knight e6, or knight captures takes, and goodbye our dreams to do short castle. So that's not going to work. Some players do the move pawn to g6, and they're, quite inaccurate here, playing the move pawn e5. Again, remaining this bishop opened. Knight g5, knight h6, then short castle. The rook, the knight, the bishop will create tremendous pressure on the pawn f7. And this is the last mistake that I wanted to talk about. So let's summarize. e4, c5, d4. Early mistake. We don't capture that pawn, we will be in trouble. Alapin, after c3, we need to play either pawn d5 or knight f6. Knight f6, you can check in the video courses. We don't do that, we will be in trouble because white will take the center. White will do knight f3 first, and then after d6, c3, they will play the Alapin, the poison pawn variation, where we mustn't capture on e4. Be careful of that queen a4 check. Then, the next mistake that a lot of players do is playing very passive against the Yugoslav attack. When white does the long castle and then push those pawns, we don't do anything on the queen side to create our counterplay. So we need to be very careful about that. Another very common mistake is when we go with the move knight c6 and then after d4 takes, we capture, activating the queen very early. White will do, again, the queen side castle and start an attack on the king side. We don't have another knight to attack the queen by the move knight c6. The pawn e5 move, where we will do that e5 as a mistake. For example, knight f3, pawn g6, and then d4 takes, and e5 at some point. Be very careful. You can close your bishop, create weaknesses, weak pawn as well. So this is bad. And finally, the closed Sicilian, after knight c3, knight c6, when we'll play a bit passive, or we ignore the a2, f7 diagonal completely, push e5 at the most wrong moment. After knight d5 is going to get our pawn or create very powerful attacking chances. Just pawn e6, and we're fine. These were the common mistakes, so please follow like, subscribe, and in the description below you will see my email. Send some interesting games where you or your opponent did such mistakes of the Sicilian. So see you in the next video series. Have a great day.